Hey, I'm Jay Royster, and today we are meeting with John Morris of Beacon Partners to talk about Carolina Logistics Park and all things industrial. So let's go check it out. So here we are at Metrolina Park, meeting with John Morris of Beacon Partners. We're going to talk about Carolina Logistics Park and all things industrial. So John, thanks for having us today.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'd like to shout out to our customer here, Prodigy Diabetes, Rick Idmani, for letting us use their space. It's a perfect spot to take in Metrolina Park. Talk about some other things.
Absolutely. So before we get into talking about Carolina Logistics Park and other industrial developments and projects with Beacon, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background with Beacon and commercial real estate.
Yeah, so I grew up here in Charlotte, got a real estate job with Beacon Partners, leasing space, doing property management. At that time, there were 4 of us back in 1995, and they hadn't found a way to get rid of me since. There were 4 or 5 of us at that point. I think the company's grown to 35 people, and it's been a wild ride.
So let's talk about Carolina Logistics Park, 300 acres, the largest industrial development project in Charlotte, 4.2 million square feet of industrial, 3.5 million of Class A distribution. Tell us about the background of that site and how you guys found this opportunity.
Yeah, at the beginning of Beacon, we had a park right next door to Metrolina Park where we're sitting today that was 90 acres. Then there's River Oaks up in Concord, 126 acre park. We started Metrolina Park in 2016, and Metrolina Park really just vacuumed, and this was a quote from Chris Kavinsky at Davidson Young, and just sort of vacuumed all of the absorption into this park. It's an amazing location in the center of a lot of industrial. We developed 1.2 million square feet, and we're developing the final 650,000 square feet. Industrial really has been blown forward by 3 tailwinds. Internet adoption, we all know about that, I think. And then just coupled with tariffs, that put a lot of pressure on supply chain and warehousing, and people realized maybe just-in-time inventory isn't the best thing in the world. Maybe we need a little safety stock, reshoring of manufacturing. We haven't seen as much of that yet. It takes longer to sort of uproot and redo manufacturing facilities. This last year has been a really good year for industrial real estate, and hence buying Carolina Logistics Park is sort of the cloud lifted in April and May, and things started loosening up in June and July. It felt like it makes sense to go ahead with that transaction.
So tell us about the background of the property and how long you all have been pursuing this deal.
The landowners down at Carolina Logistics Park, it's a combination of Mr. Harley is in his late 70s, early 80s, and was farming cattle. Would go out every day and farm cattle on his 140 acres. And then the Miller family, who owned an 80-acre tract to the south and another 140-acre tract to the south. And both of the landowners had sort of gotten up in age. They realized that farming didn't make a lot of sense, and sort of together they decided now it's time to sell.
Right.
And we had been at the table with them since 2011.
So a decade in the works.
It
was not an overnight success.
No, it was not, and ended with bang during COVID.
Well, what was most compelling for you all, both from a scale standpoint, but also from a pure real estate standpoint? Great proximity to 77, 485, the airport.
That size of contiguous property in Mecklenburg County. So you have access to the urban core, and close to Fort Mill, you're close to Ballantyne, you're close to the urban core. We've got access to Downs Road and Nations Ford Road that's connected by Carolina Logistics Drive. So the ingress-egress is great for both employees and trucks.
So let's talk about some of the users that are going to be in the park or that you all have targeted or already underway with. It was reported that Amazon has taken 1 million square feet there, and you've got 3.5 million of new Class A distribution. How significant is it for Amazon, not only from a credit standpoint, but also taking that much size in the park? How important was that for you all?
It's huge from a momentum standpoint. Getting the first deal is vital, keeping the momentum going. So about the time that we closed on the property, with one closing in August and a couple in September, Amazon, I think, sent us an RFP in August, and we negotiated with them all the way up until late February. And when we finally signed the lease with them, I remember it was a Friday night when it came over DocuSign. That was a big That was a big
That was
night.
a good weekend.
That was a good weekend. There was texts going around, and there was,
Maybe a glass of wine or champagne.
Yeah, there was some Giphies, and there was some, the emoticons, and it was pretty fun. It's a partnership. You're under sort of a reimbursement agreement for quite some time before the actual lease gets signed, and it's just, we had never done anything quite like that before, and leaned on a lot of good friends across the country through organizations like NAOP, and just, is this really how it works? Are we doing the right thing? We had a great attorney who had done a lot of Amazon deals.
So it took a little patience.
It took a lot of faith, is what it took. A little patience and a lot of faith.
Yeah.
But yeah, it ended up well at the end of the day.
How has that impacted the future developments for the park and where you're headed moving forward versus maybe where you were pre-Amazon?
Yeah, so the sellers shared some site plans they had received from other developers once everything closed, and much like us, we were thinking smaller buildings. We had originally planned for 11 buildings in the park. We sort of took 8 of those buildings, one of the Amazon included, and smushed 2 400,000 square foot buildings and made a 1 million square foot Amazon building. Well, we did that with 6 other buildings. So the park went from 11 buildings to 7 buildings, and really that's an indicator of the demand that we're seeing that is really driven by e-commerce and these larger fulfillment centers.
So what are some of the challenges that you all have encountered during this process?
Clearly we were going to pay a record-setting price, and that's always intimidating. You don't want to be, what do they say, pioneers get killed, settlers get the land.
Right.
You don't want to be pioneering on paying the highest price.
You don't want to be the most expensive house on the block.
Exactly. And additionally, the land out there, it looked flat, it looked beautiful, pristine. You don't have to worry about clearing any trees. But underneath the soil, we were. If you look at an aerial, we're next to a quarry. Well, sure enough, we hit a lot of rock. Mm-hmm. The soil in that part of Westinghouse is just this clayey, expansive clay that you can't build on. So we had to deal with the rock, which included a lot of blasting, especially along utility lines. That was several $1 million. Mm-hmm. We had to chemically alter the nature of the soil by adding lime, and then given we were going to build in the winter, we also added cement to it so that we could, if it rained, all the water drains off of the site. But with the town of Pineville, we ended up in a great place, and we're sort of continuing to tweak the plan with them. And then talking to brokers, the site plan evolved, calling guys like you up and saying, what do you see in the market? Mm-hmm. Where is the market headed?
Kudos to you all for navigating through all those challenges. So aside from this project, John, let's talk about the industrial market over the last 25 years since you've been in the business. How have you seen the industrial market change both in Charlotte and at a more macro level?
Yeah, in Charlotte, the size of the buildings we talked about, it used to be that you would get 300,000 or 400,000 square feet a year. Childers Klein would build a 100,000 square foot building. Crescent Resources would build a 100,000 square foot building. The absorption was 500,000 square feet a year. A big year of absorption was 1 million square feet. And the deal sizes were 20 to 75,000 square feet. 100,000 square foot deal was a big deal in 1998. And that's obviously evolved to 500,000, 1 million square foot buildings and 1 million square foot deals. But the bread and butter of the market is still those spaces that we built and competed against. And right before the Great Recession, sort of 2005 and 6, we finally saw some rent growth. There was a little bit of construction price inflation in 2003 and 4 that helped that along. And what we're seeing now is just a dramatic increase in construction price inputs. And now we're finally seeing inflation in building materials.
Well, now that we've talked about some of the changes that you've seen over the last 25 years, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but where do you see the industrial market going at a macro level and in Charlotte over the next 10 years with e-commerce continuing to take up a higher percentage of retail sales than traditional brick and mortar? That's having a very profound impact on the supply chain. So where do you see the future of industrial going?
We're now firmly entrenched as a second-tier city, so you're getting a lot more capital coming to Charlotte, a lot of new developers coming to Charlotte. So these developers are seeing that, they're seeing the population trends, people coming to the Carolinas, and product follows people. Whether it's a warehouse, especially an e-commerce warehouse, if you've got more rooftops and more people, you need more warehouse space. All of the sites that everybody knows about in Charlotte that you couldn't develop before are suddenly getting redeveloped. Mm-hmm. Like the site we put the FedEx building on, that That was a site that had a bunch of undocumented fill, was a brownfield, and the remediation
Right.
of the site for what was wrong cost more than the purchase price of the site. So I think you're going to continue to see the market grow at 3 to 5 million square feet. Even all the bad sites in Mecklenburg County are going to get gobbled up. So Charlotte's pushing into Gaston County, Lincoln County, Iredell County, Cabarrus, Rowan. Every developer is putting their stake in the ground, and us included.
You've also had a great track record in the office market, both from an acquisition standpoint and a new construction standpoint. Your East Moorhead deal, your projects in South End, Rail Yard sold for a record number. What is Beacon going to focus on moving forward?
In 2011, we saw the writing on the wall, and it felt like suburban office was a timing game. And on the north side of Charlotte, Harris Corners, we sold some suburban office product in Raleigh, and Mike started. We moved into a building that we had bought with Aston Properties on Moorhead Street, a little 20,000 square foot building. We got together with the Harkeys and sort of merged with some assets they had on Moorhead Street that are great assets, and then we're able to buy a few pieces of land with 1616 Camden and 500 East Moorhead and Rail Yard. I see us continuing to do just that. We got a great land position, you know, in Losa Station. Losa Village is some properties that we bought from the Vincent family right next to that. So I see us continuing that formula of knowing our market and knowing who the brokers are and trying to get our fair share of the opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, from a character standpoint, that plays a very important role in the secret sauce for Beacon as well, because you all have the credibility, but you know, you do things the right way, and very high character group, and very talented group as well. So thank you for sitting down with us today, John, and Charlotte is very appreciative for everything you guys have done in Charlotte and the contributions you've made to the real estate world here.
And we're just blessed to live in this region with so many great competitors, great brokers, just a great community.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to continued success for Beacon, and thanks for sitting down with us today.
Great, appreciate it.
Likewise. Thanks for watching today. If you're interested in keeping up with the latest developments in Charlotte, make sure to like and subscribe.